Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. And we have got a brand new update for Deadlock, the first balance patch in about a month, and it includes a bunch of very exciting things, including a bunch of highly requested nerfs for certain aspects of the game. I think you already know what I'm talking about. And there's also a soft Vyper rework thrown in, but also in traditional Deadlock fashion, there are a few changes that seem completely out of left field. So I'm going to cover all of the important changes here. If you want to follow along with the patch notes, a link will be in the description, but let's get started by talking about some of the general changes. So first of all, we've got a pretty sizable buff to gun builds just in general because weapon investment has been increased. So it now caps out at 115% if you max out this orange bar down here and invest 28.8 thousand souls into weapon items. Previously, this capped out at 93%. So gradually, just as you scale up through the weapon category, you're going to get more weapon damage. Now, regardless of what weapon hero you're playing, just buy a bunch of weapon items and you'll get more damage. Another very big change that I'm sure a lot of people are going to like because nobody enjoys getting stun locked is they have now added diminishing returns to many different types of crowd control in the game. So basically the way this works is that if you are applying a CC to an enemy, it'll be reduced in duration when affected by other CCs within a short interval. So basically, if you get stunned once, the stun will last for the full duration of the stun. But then if you get stunned twice within a short interval, that second stun will last for less than the intended original duration. So it's to basically help prevent stun locks from occurring and being as brutal as they would have been in the past. So let's say you slam someone with Abrams, there's stun number one, and then you hit stun number two just like this. That stun is going to last just a little bit less longer, and it'll affect CCs up to about 21% less duration over the past 7 seconds. So it can basically stack like 3 times if my math is correct. So it basically just applies to all of the crowd control types that would be affected by reactive barrier. That's kind of how you can think of it. So the main thing, of course, is stuns, but there's also movement lock, chained, immobilized, slept that will also be affected by this crowd control reduction. So this is a nice sort of passive debuff resist for hard crowd control that makes it so that getting stunned multiple times in a row doesn't feel as bad. Matchmaking has also been updated to include more considerations for balanced team comp rather than just frontliner characters. And it's a bit vague what this actually means, but hopefully it means that team comps will be a bit more balanced going forward, but we'll just have to see over the coming days. So let me know in the comments section if you've had more balanced matches since the patch actually dropped. Another interesting thing is that they have reduced the shooting lockout period when jumping down to 0 seconds, so you can now seamlessly shoot and jump without there being a slight delay in your weapon shot. However, to compensate, they've made it so that when you jump, for a very small window after that, you'll actually be 10% less accurate, which honestly, it's not really that clear. It really doesn't seem like it's going to matter much. It seems like a pretty small change, but I figured I'd mention it anyways because maybe there's a small technical, reason why this is important.
Reason number 87, I'm better than...
Here's a change that's going to suck for Lash players and parkour enthusiasts such as myself. Wall jumps now cost half a stamina each after the first wall jump, and the first wall jump is still free. So I can do this wall jump, that is free, but then if I double jump and then wall jump again, you'll notice that it takes half a stamina. So if you want to try and stall yourself and basically just keep yourself in the air by doing these wall jumps, it is no longer free. You need half a stamina to execute the wall jump, and this is going to drain your stamina much faster than before. So bit of an unfortunate change, but the first wall jump being free is still very good because it means a lot of parkour maneuvers in this game are still very possible and don't cost anything. The mid-boss and Rejuvenator have also received some changes this update. First of all, the mid-boss has slightly more HP, but slightly less damage resistance scaling as the match goes on, but the real major changes come to the actual Rejuvenator itself. The Rejuvenator bonus HP has been reduced from 15% to 10%, so you'll be a little bit squishier with your Rejuve buff now. And the very big thing is that for subsequent Rejuvenator takes, you will no longer get an extra crystal. So previously, the first Rejuve gave 3, but then the second and all subsequent Rejuves after that gave 4. Now it's just 3 no matter what, so just 3 Rejuve credits through and through, which is definitely a nice nerf to the Rejuve because whichever team got a hold of that second Rejuvenator just felt completely unstoppable, so this will make them a little bit more stoppable. Now remember when I said that there were some changes that came out of left field this update? This is what I'm talking about right here. So unsecured souls are no longer claimed by just standing on them like this. Instead, as you can see on my screen here, you have to heavy melee to claim the souls, which is interesting. I'm not sure why they've done this. I guess to make it a little bit harder and a little bit more deliberate to actually claim the souls. And also now, you do have a way to counter enemies who are trying to pick up the souls, because if you see them trying to heavy melee the souls, you can try and get right up on top of them and parry them if you're fast enough. So that'll open up some new interesting interactions for sure. Although I will admit that floating soul orb looks a little goofy. I'm not sure what's up with that. They might need to redo the the textures and the animations for that to make it look a little bit less unnatural. Now, the soul urn has also gotten some changes. So first of all, the movement speed bonus, as you'll notice here, is drastically reduced. As a matter of fact, it honestly doesn't feel like I have a bonus at all. It's gone down from plus 7 meters to plus 3.5 meters per second. I am feeling much slower with this. However, they have made it so that the carrier of the Spirit Urn now has 30% to both bullet and spirit resistances, meaning that they are much, much tankier. However, they will also take more damage from holding the urn too long. That's gone up from 1% to 1.5% max health per second. So I believe the purpose of this change is to actually... Oh, I'm gonna get stunned again. It's to actually make it so that you can try to force the urn in a little bit easier now because you have those resistances available, but actually escorting the urn across the map in the first place takes more time. The enemy team has more time to prepare a response, and yeah, it'll really change the dynamics of the Spirit Urn fight as a whole. Whether it's for better or for worse, well, I'll leave that to you in the comments section to let me know what you think about the change. There are a couple of other general changes which I didn't talk about because I don't think they're important enough to discuss, but the final change I do want to mention is that the neutral shop here, these secret shops here, will no longer shut down if there are enemy players nearby. So, two people on different teams can potentially use the same secret shop, which, I mean, that should be pretty funny, right? So, yeah, just a nice little change, because sometimes it's very annoying when you want to buy an item, you get interrupted by an enemy. Not only are they shooting at you, but you didn't even get to buy your item. Alright, so now let's get into the hero balance changes. And by the way, real quick, if you're enjoying this update coverage, then I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe down below. It's absolutely free, and it helps you stay up to date on all my latest videos, including update notes just like these. But let's get started here with Abrams, who has gotten a couple of changes. First of all, the Siphon life damage and spirit skilling has been reduced by 10%, but they have increased the heal ratio by 10%. So, you will basically be doing a little bit less damage with this, but you should still be able to get a good amount of healing from it. And also, the arguably more important change here is that Shoulder Charge's Tier 1 has been reworked. So instead of providing 25% weapon power, it now provides 20 bullet damage per shot, or 2.2 per pellet. And what this will do is mean that the follow-up melee, when you actually Shoulder Charge someone, won't be doing bonus damage. Instead, it'll just be the shotgun that's doing bonus damage for 8 seconds. So this makes that melee just not as impactful anymore. It's still going to be obviously worthwhile to melee after it, but it just won't be hitting as hard, and Abrams players will have to do a bit more damage with their follow-up shots from their shotgun. Billy apparently didn't have footsteps for his out-of-combat animations, so yeah, now you can hear footsteps. They're very quiet. They're very, very quiet. But also, his move speed has been reduced from 7.3 to 7.1, but you get some movement speed back when you use Blasted. Actually, a pretty sizable amount. You get half a meter per second of bonus move speed now on Blasted, from 1.75 up to 2.25. Calico players, it's time to come back to the game because your character just got giga buffed. There are so many just generally nice buffs here for Calico, so let's get straight to it. First of all, base bullet damage has increased from 1.9 to 2 per pellet, so just a nice little damage bonus there. The Gloom Bomb's radius has been increased from 2.5 meters to 3 meters, so bigger AoE, easier to hit the bombs. Eva's duration has been buffed from 14 seconds to 16 seconds, a nice 2-second increase. Leaping Slash's height has also been increased from 1.5 meters to 2.5 meters, and I'm assuming that's talking about the damage radius, because I just jumped a lot higher than that. And also, Return to Shadows just got 10 seconds taken off the cooldown from 100 seconds down to 90 seconds, and the radius has also been boosted from 7 meters to 7.5 meters, so it's easier to hit, and you get to use it more frequently. Massive buffs to every part of her kit. She's overall going to feel a lot better to play this patch, so have fun, Calico players. hopefully this doesn't lead to her getting nerfed again. The Doorman got some doorway placement improvements, which is always very nice. So it should just be easier and more intuitive now to place doorways on various surfaces, which is very nice because, yeah, it's a little wonky sometimes, and it still looks like it feels a little wonky here in the shooting range. I think I'm using Quick Cast is what I have it set to right now. And some of the flat walls obviously feel pretty good, but some of the more, some of the walls with more like geometry on them still feel a little strange. But yeah, this is definitely one of the parts of his kit that needs the most improvement, and so I'm glad to see this. And the doorway can also, by the way, be placed through veils now. Apparently it was able to do that, and then it wasn't able to do that, and now it's able to do that again. And finally, they improved performance when placing the doorway, which should feel a lot better, especially for people on lower end systems. So no proper balance changes for Doorman, but just a bunch of bug fixes, and he should feel better to play now, so we love to see it. Drifter didn't really get any balance changes, but he did get some changes that should make it a bit easier to tell when he's ambushing you. So they added a new sound for the teleport precast. I'm going to shut up and let you hear it. So there's like that little whistle sound you hear, and that should indicate a little bit better that the Drifter has teleported behind you. And also they did add a slight cast delay to the ambush from 0 seconds up to 0.35 seconds, so he won't be able to teleport on you as instantly. You'll have more time to react. Dynamo got some nice buffs. First of all, Kinetic Pulse has an even higher blast radius now. It's up to 1 meter. All the way up from 0.7 meters, so that's a pretty nice change. And also the spirit scaling on the rejuvenating aura has been increased from 0.372 to 0.4, so just a little bit of extra health restored on the rejuvenating aura should be nice. Just a small little change there. Great Talon got some nerfs, which, to be honest, surprised me, because I still don't think of Great Talon as a particularly strong character, but I guess Valve decided that he is, because they nerfed the charge shot spirit scaling, both by default, the original spirit scaling, and also the improved spirit scaling that you get at the tier 3. So both of them used to be 1.11, now they are both just 1.0. And also they nerfed the rain of arrows, so it no longer lingers the air benefits like unlimited air dash and multi-shot once the ability is cancelled or runs out. So previously, you'd be able to fly up into the air, and then once it's cancelled, you would still have the multi-shot and the ability to air dash infinitely, but that has been removed. You are no longer able to do that. So, yeah, I'm shocked by this. Maybe some Great Talon players can elucidate me in the comments as to why this is necessary, because I still didn't really see him that often, nor did I think he was particularly overpowered. In a change that will shock nobody, Ivy's gun is getting nerfed from 0.15 damage growth per boon down to 0.11 damage growth per boon. Pretty sizable nerf. They did, however, reduce the Kudzu Bomb's DPS, both in terms of the base DPS down to 50 damage per second and the tier 3 damage per second down to 40. So yeah, some small nerfs there, but they did also buff the spirit scaling per boon, so hopefully, I guess she gets most of that damage back by the late game. And also, the Stone Form did get actually a pretty sizable buff to its spirit scaling from 1.0 up to 1.5, so you get way more damage on that now, which is quite exciting. And finally, the airdrop no longer provides allied bullet resistance. It still gives a barrier, but the ally who you drop no longer has that bullet resistance to them. So a bit of a nerf there. Mostly nerfs for Ivy, but a few nice things. Really more of a power shift than anything. Never thought I'd see the day where Gun Kelvin is getting nerfed, but here we are. Gun Kelvin has been very powerful as of recently, and they decided it's time to nerf it. So they nerfed his base bullet damage from 18.9 down to 17.8, and they have also reduced his clip size from 15 down to 14, so he has to reload a bit more frequently. They did, however, buff the spirit power per boon from 1.1 to 1.3, so as you level up throughout the match, you get more spirit power now, and that should incentivize more spirit-based gameplay with this character. They nerfed my Lash! What the heck? So Ground Strike's range has been reduced from 11 meters to 10 meters. They also increased the cooldown by 2 seconds from 19 to 21, and they also reduced the base damage of Ground Strike from 70 down to 60. The heck, man? Why'd you do it, Valve? Lash is so fun. This sucks. Alright, now let's take a look at Mina. She has some highly requested changes here, and some other changes too, I guess. So first of all, she has a new heavy melee animation. Check this out. She kind of kicks people, Hey! Interesting. Is that the first, like, heavy melee kick that we have in the game, actually? I don't know. That's neat. She can also now float in the air for 2.5 seconds when holding down the zoom button, which is pretty neat. And, yeah, kind of synergizes with her umbrella. I guess it's very thematically consistent, so, yeah, that's kind of cool, I suppose. She also, however, has received some nerfs. So the Rake spirit scaling has just been gutted from 1.5 down to 0.5. That is pretty rough. However, at the tier 2, it actually gets that heal per kill scaling back. So if we upgrade to the tier 2 of the Rake, we are back up to that 1.5 spirit scaling. So this is a change specifically intended to drastically nerf her early game healing, which is notoriously very powerful. And on top of that, the tier 3 has 1% extra missing health as damage now. Sanguine Retreat's cooldown has also been nerfed from 27 seconds to 30 seconds. This had a ludicrous cooldown buff recently, and so they're taking that back just a little bit, which honestly is completely fair enough. And finally, the change we've all been waiting for, Nox Nostra now has 50% damage reduction against objectives. The days of Mina deleting objectives in half a second flat are gone. Look at this. That's like no damage. I mean, granted, I didn't upgrade it at all, but you get the point. It's crazy. They nerfed this really, really hard. If I go ahead and upgrade it to tier 3 now and just pop this. Yeah, I mean, it's still some decent damage, I guess. And if I were to have a lot of upgrades on it too, then that would be pretty nice. But, yeah, woof, that is a very big buff. And on top of that as well, by the way, Nox Nostra reduced the cap on objective damage from the tier 3 from plus 50 damage per bat to plus 20 damage. So this is a nerf specifically against objectives. So her objective shredding capabilities are basically just done now. She can't really do it anymore. It's been completely gutted. And thank goodness for that, because, like, you know, I guess it was a cool part of her kit, and it was very powerful, but it was not fun to play against in the slightest. So to just see Mina ult your walker, there's nothing you can do about it. You try and stun her, she uses this ability, Sanguine Retreat, to dodge any stuns that you try to put on her, and you cannot protect your walker. You cannot stop her from deleting the mid-boss in 1 second flat. It's just, it wasn't healthy for the game. So this is a very big, very highly requested change, and I'm glad to see it. And she is still getting some love, too, with this new umbrella thing, which, honestly, this is cool. I vibe with this a lot. That is really awesome. Mo and Krill is getting a slight power shift. First of all, Mo and Krill's gun damage has been increased per boon from 0.063 to 0.07, so yay, gun Mo and Krill is back. Maybe. Probably not. But aside from that, it is all nerfs. So the Burrow bullet resistance has been reduced from 80% to 60%, a pretty drastic nerf. He's not going to feel completely immortal against gun damage during the Burrow anymore. Still very tanky, but 80% was a ridiculous value. On top of that, they've also nerfed the combo. So the duration has gone down from 2.5 seconds to 2.4 seconds, and the tier 2 duration has been reduced from 0.75 to 0.7 seconds. So he'll be holding people for just a little bit less time now, which, yeah, fair enough. Paige is getting a lot of interesting changes. First of all, the projectile speed has been increased by 15%, so these are going to be much easier to hit now, but they have nerfed gun Paige because her bullet damage growth per boon has been reduced from 0.8 to 0.66, which is actually a pretty significant deal. They have also changed basically every ability. So Defend and Fight, which is her barrier here, has had its duration increase from 5 seconds to 7 seconds. However, the cooldown has increased from 26 seconds to 30 seconds. So if your allies are good about not taking damage, they can benefit from the weapon damage for longer now, but the cooldown is longer, so she won't be able to apply it as consistently and protect people from damage as consistently. They have also changed around the Captivating Read, so the cooldown has been reduced from 30 seconds to 25 seconds, and they also buffed the radius from 7 meters to 7.5 meters, so more spammable and easy to hit. The most interesting change, however, is to Rallying Charge. So they have nerfed both the damage and the healing of this, from 150 at base down to 125 at base, and the damage scaling has been reduced from 1.2 to just 1, and the healing scaling has been reduced from 2 to just 1.6, and that's in regards to the spirit scaling. However, the strength of the heal and spirit damage is amplified as the knights travel further, and so this can scale up to a value of plus 100% damage and healing at a distance of 350 meters, which is a very long distance for that to actually ramp up. So basically, this is I guess, encouraging sniper Paige. Sit real far back from the fight, throw this out, have your teammates walk into it, they get a bigger heal. Kind of a goofy change, because this seems wildly impractical to hit it from this far away. And if you're using it up close, then it's just going to be straight up worse now, in terms of the spirit damage and healing. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea for a mechanic, but it doesn't feel all that practical to me, just in terms of my initial opinion about this change. And they also increased the horse's speed from 1700 to 2000, they reduced the knock-up from 800 to 600, and they also reduced the spawn-in time from 0.15 seconds to 0.05 seconds to remove the dead zone in front. So the horses will handle better now. That's pretty cool. But yeah, the damage and healing is worse. Unless you use it from ludicrously far away and are actually able to hit it properly, just like that. So, real interesting change for Paige's ult. Another day, another 7 nerf. Alright, let's just get to it. So the static charge tier 2 has been reduced from 8 meters to 7 meters of radius. Very fair enough. It's still a gigantic stunt. Like, what the heck is this? This is stupid. Why is that a thing? Also, the spirit power scaling on Power Surge has been nerfed again by just 10%. So, even less damage on this now. Lightning Strike, however, has received the absolute biggest nerf out of anything, because its damage has gone down from 90 to 75, but the critical thing here is the Spirit Power scaling has been cut down by almost 66%. So the Spirit Power scaling has reduced from 1.4 to 0.5. Ouch! That is significantly less damage on the strike. If I go ahead and just buy Boundless Spirit and a bunch of items that you would normally buy to amplify your spirit scaling on 7 here, let's go all the way here. Let's get Infuser online, let's get everything online, right? And then I go ahead and max out my ults, and let's max level my character too. How hard is this Lightning Strike now hitting? Did I see 300 damage there? That was like 280 or something like that. That was quite low. It says 166 strike damage. It might have been amplified a little bit by escalating exposure, but yeah, that is a lot less damage, man. That is so much less damage. That's crazy. Lightning Strike is kind of just... I mean, it's still, I guess it's worth it to use it. You can use it for the knockback, and you can get a little bit of extra damage on it. But, oh man, it is just a fraction of its former power now. It is bad out here. Alright, let's take a look at Victor. He's getting a lot of changes here. So first of all, his base health has been slightly adjusted. He now has more max health at the start of the match, but he will have ever so slightly less max health when he maxes out his boons. So, very small change. They have also changed the Pain Battery. This is ultimately a buff here, so they have reduced the damage required to charge it up from 50% max health to 40% max health, and they have also made it so that the bolts will hit world geometry less often. They were hitting it way too much, more than intended, so it should be easier to actually hit these properly on enemies now, as opposed to the wall. The Aura of Suffering is also just more tame now, through and through. So the minimum damage and the maximum damage both have reduced DPS spirit scaling. The max has gone down from 1.25 to 1.1, and the min has gone down from 0.25 to 0.22. So just less damage on this, through and through, but also they reduce the self-damage he takes. So instead of taking 100% self-damage, it's back down to 85% once again. So Victor takes less damage, the people around him take less damage, everyone takes less damage now. What's most interesting, though, are the changes to Shocking Reanimation. This ultimate is honestly mostly just used for the Resurrect. The explosion component and the bonus damage component on the gun both weren't really factors that you were usually thinking about, in part because sometimes it just wouldn't even hit enemies who were in the radius because they could be under the ultimate just barely and avoid it because the Z-axis scaling was just broken. So first of all, they have improved the hit detection and they have fixed it not hitting enemies that are too far below or too far above the Shocking Reanimations, so should be much more consistent to hit now. But where things really get interesting are when it comes to the buffs that they've given to Shocking Reanimation. So first of all, they have increased the stun duration from 1 second to 1.5 seconds, and they have increased the damage spirit scaling from 1.8 to 2.0. Big spirit scaling on this. They have also changed the tier 1 upgrade from plus 10 spirit damage per bullet and 25% fire rate until reload to plus 3 meters of radius and 100 extra damage, which you'll notice was the previous tier 3, except the damage was 200, not 100. So a little bit less damage, but you get that range and that damage online much sooner now, so that's pretty big. And they have also changed the tier 3 in a very fascinating way. So now, instead of just giving the gun benefits until your next reload, it now gives you these gun benefits, 20% fire rate and 10 spirit damage per bullet, while it's on cooldown. And fun fact, this ultimate has a long cooldown. It has a 190-second cooldown by default. So yeah, that sounds very interesting. You could potentially see people building around the ultimate now, and maybe building, like, you know, still building Berserker and gun items on Victor like you would normally build for, but then planning on ulting, getting this buff, and then just slamming people with a bunch of spirit and gun damage. Like, this is interesting. And so yeah, to summarize, it's way easier to hit the ultimate now. You get the range upgrade online sooner, and also the hit detection is just better. It stuns for longer, and it has better spirit scaling. And also now, I just get, apparently, a bunch of spirit damage and fire rate, although it seems to not be working because I have the cooldown thing enabled. Let me turn that off, and now, yeah, I get that fire rate, I get that spirit power. And just at level 0 here, right, it adds a substantial amount of damage to the gun. And the damage per bullet does also scale with spirit, by the way. So if I were to buy potentially Boundless Spirit here, just as an example, now we're doing 14 to 15 damage per bullet. And yeah, I can reload, and then I can do this again, and we just have this permanent buff up for the next 170 seconds. And I'm just curious, if I die right now, oh, I have no death on. Let me fix that too. Gosh! Let's see real quick if I still have the buff. I think I should still have the buff, and indeed I still have the buff. So yeah, it even persists through Dav, which is crazy. This is a very, very big change for Victor. I kind of want to make a build around this. This is insane. Vindicta is getting some big buffs here. She got pretty hard nerfs previously to the Stake and her Grill Dicta playstyle, and so they are buffing her gun and her sniper even more to compensate. The base bullet damage has been increased from 11.4 to 11.8, pretty small, but still a nice change. They've also buffed the flight. The duration has gone up from 13 seconds to 15 seconds, and the tier 2 flight has been increased from 7 seconds to 8 seconds, so you get to fly for even longer now. And the spirit damage scaling has increased from 0.19 to 0.22, so even more spirit power scaling will give you even more spirit damage on your gun now while you're flying. So it still has, of course, the downsides of flight. It's a very awkward angle to shoot from a lot of the time, and also you're a very easy target to hit. But the damage potential, if you are able to maximize the benefit out of this, is now even higher. And they have also made it so that Assassinate's bonus damage spirit scaling has been increased from 1.4 to 1.7, so it's easier to hit actually hard-hitting Assassinates now, and the cooldown has been reduced from 60 seconds to 50 seconds, so you get to use it more frequently. So you could potentially go back around to making a sniper-based playstyle for Vindicta. A sniper playstyle for the sniper character? You're kidding me! That's insane! Man, Viscous is getting more nerfs. So the base alt-fire damage has been reduced from 48 down to 42, so this is... yeah, this is a fraction of its former self, kind of like 7's Lightning Strike. They have increased the alt-fire damage growth per boon from 1.25 to 1.6, so if you max level your character, then you are now doing 95 damage with the alt-fire, which, I mean, I wasn't doing that at base at one point. I mean, yeah, it's helpful, I guess, but it's not the same as it used to be. They also nerfed Splatter's damage from 80 down to 70, but they did increase the tier 1 buff from 5.75 seconds of cooldown reduction to 6 seconds of cooldown reduction. Thanks a bunch. So, yeah, really big targeted nerfs again towards Viscous's early game, which his early laning stage is very oppressive, I will admit. And so less damage on that is actually a pretty big deal. Alright, so let's talk about the Vyper soft rework now. Vyper has some very interesting changes here. First of all, the Screw Jab Dagger has been reworked. So this allows her to now throw a dagger which deals spirit damage and applies a slow, and every subsequent dagger against the same target will stack the spirit damage and the slow. So I can throw one dagger, that's 52 damage and a slow, and you see this icon now appear over their heads. If I throw it again, this next dagger does 79 damage, and you'll notice it's now a charged ability. And then if I add another dagger, that's 104 damage, and so we are able to stack this up, and there are 3 max stacks. So if I throw another dagger, it's going to do 130, and each dagger is just doing 130 damage now. And so there's this, like, ramping damage mechanic with the Screw Jab dagger. And you'll notice that the move speed also gets pretty severe. The first one does 35% movement slow, but then 15% is added per stack. And so we can actually slow this test dummy here quite substantially. And we can more than double the movement speed penalty of the dagger, if I'm reading this correctly. So that is pretty interesting. And yeah, you can definitely buy something like Rapid Recharge right now. And this will add a lot of spirit damage, and it'll add even more charges. And so if I turn the cooldown off, I can throw a dagger. We have 3 seconds until we can throw the next dagger. We can throw it again, and then we can throw another one. And the cooldown is also still pretty low. It's only a 10-second cooldown. And so we can just keep spamming these. So Spirit Viper might genuinely sort of be a thing with this new rework, which is pretty interesting. And they've also changed around some of the upgrades too, so let's take a look at that. So first of all, the Tier 1 has been changed from -4 seconds of cooldown to +1 charge, so we can get yet another charge of this. The Tier 2 has been changed from +50 damage to -8% bullet resist and an additional -5% bullet resist per stack. So we can stack this up quite a lot, and we can get a lot of bullet resist shred if we are actually accurate and we stack these up throughout the course of a fight. We're talking about, let's see, 15 plus 8, we're talking about 23% bullet resist shred right now. That's actually a really big deal. And then the Tier 3 has been changed from +2 seconds slow duration and -1 stamina to 40% cooldown reduction on hit. So that really helps, again, with spamming out these daggers. It helps with our overall tempo and uptime with the daggers. And so now I can really just spam these. And look at how many daggers I'm hitting this guy with right now. That is actually kind of crazy. And only now am I out of daggers, but only for the next 6 seconds, and then I get another dagger back. So that is pretty cool, honestly. That is a very big change to the Screw Jab dagger. But we're also not done with that because, yeah, they also made it significantly faster. The projectile speed has been increased from 3,500 to 4,200, so it should be easier to hit these. I think they'll be more in line with Shiv's daggers now, if I remember correctly. And they also have new updated sound effects, and they have a pitch incrementer to impact sound, so it'll change the impact sound slightly based on how many stacks they have on a target. So that is, yeah, pretty cool. Very big rework to this ability. Next, let's talk about the lethal venom. So let me show you something cool. Hey, Guardian. Let me put the lethal venom on you now. So yeah, you can lethal venom objectives now. You can lethal venom on the Guardian, Rejuvenator, Walker. You can't do it on minions. So you can't accidentally waste lethal venom on a minion. That would really suck. It's a long cooldown. You don't want to do that. But they have also made it so that the Tier 3 upgrade will now trigger on all enemies. So your bullets will be able to build up lethal venom, and these bullets can indeed build up lethal venom on the minions, assuming you don't kill them before you build it up. I don't think you can build up lethal venom on them. I'm going to be perfectly honest. It seems like they die too fast. But yeah, I can use my bullets to build up the lethal venom here on the Guardian, just like that. Look at that. So this actually gives Vyper a lot of additional objective pressure, especially if you are playing Spirit Viper, and the majority of your damage comes from spirit damage with stuff like lethal venom. So that is actually a really cool change. I do like that. It just gives her a lot more versatility when dealing with non-players. And then also, they have made it so that Slither is a little bit different. First of all, it's no longer leveled up by default at the start of the game. So if you're a crazy person and you don't want to start the match with Slither, but instead want to start with Lethal Venom or Screw Jab Dagger, you can do that now. It's a small change, but it is a nice little quality of life. And they have also made it so that Slither's Tier 3 no longer grants you 20% resists. Instead, on Slide, you gain a 180 barrier for 5 seconds, and that has an 8-second cooldown. So I can slide, I get this barrier, quite nice, and yeah, you also notice the cooldown element right here on the UI. So once that is back, then I can slide again, and I get that barrier again. So that is quite nice. And finally, Slither now leaves a green trail, so I guess the enemies can kind of track you a little bit easier. It's small, but it is there, and it also kind of looks a little bit weird when I'm rounding corners, so yeah. New little trail there. A lot of big changes for Vyper here. This is definitely a soft rework. She still mostly functions the same with the lethal venom and stuff, but the fact that it can be applied to objectives is a huge deal. It opens up a lot of new possibilities, and the Screw Jab Dagger feels completely different now. So yeah, that is pretty cool. I'm definitely going to try out some Vyper over the next few days and see if maybe we can make a new spirit build for her. That would be something special. Anyways, from an exciting soft rework to some boring changes again. Last Stand's DPS spirit scaling has been reduced from 1.45 to 1.38, and the fire rate spirit scaling has increased from 0.22 to 0.25. Yay. And finally, let's take a look at Wraith. So her base bullet damage has been increased from 5.115 to 5.4, so it should give her a little bit more pressure at the start of the game. And her bullet damage growth per boon has been reduced from 0.175 to 0.155. So a tiny teensy bit more early lane pressure, but then her late game pressure has been tapered off slightly. And they have also made it so that card trick's delay has been reduced from 0.75 to 0.7 seconds, so you can throw out subsequent cards a little bit faster now. Alright, now let's talk about the items. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the list of item changes on the screen. You can pause and read them if you want. I'm not going to talk about every single one. I'm only going to talk about the most important ones. So yeah, let's get started with the 2 early game gun items here. We're going to start with gun items first, of course. So Headshot Booster has been slightly nerfed from 50 down to 45, a little bit less bonus damage on that. Makes sense, it's a very powerful early game poke item. High Velocity Rounds, however, got a pretty massive buff to the bullet velocity from 35% up to 45%, and this is reflected through upgrades as well. So Express Shot and Armor Piercing Rounds both benefit from this bullet velocity buff, which is actually quite a nice buff, especially for characters who have slow primary fires. Like if I'm playing Viscous now and I buy High Velocity Rounds, it's going to be way easier to hit these than it was before. It already had a pretty nice impact before, so that's a nice change to make it feel a little bit more savory. Backstabber has been nerfed. The cooldown has been increased from 5 seconds to 6 seconds, so it now has a longer cooldown than its duration. No more 100% uptime on Backstabber now, which, yeah, definitely hurts the item a little bit. And also, Mystic Shot has been nerfed from 60 damage down to 55. But wait a second, Andrew. It says here on the UI that it's still 60. Well, that's because it's actually calculating the 7 spirit power into the equation. So if I hold Alt here, you'll see that the base damage is 55, but then the 7 spirit power gets us back up to 60 damage just like that. But previously it would have been 60 spirit damage, and then the spirit power would take it up to 65. So that's basically what happened there. But yeah, a little bit less poke on Mystic Shot now as well. Another very powerful early upgrade for a lot of extra damage. Cultist Sacrifice, one of the most meta items ever since its inception, has been nerfed yet again. So basically every part of this has been nerfed in some way, apart from the weapon damage and bullet resist versus NPCs. So the fire rate has been reduced from 10 to 8, and the boon scaling has been reduced from 0.8 to 0.7, so a lot less fire rate just in general. The health has also been reduced pretty drastically, from 100 down to 75 at base, and then also the boon scaling has gone down from 7 down to 4. That's actually a pretty big deal. The range is still the same though, but the cooldown has been increased from 250 seconds to 260 seconds, so you have even less uptime on this. Now if I go ahead and buy this, and then I buy Transcendent Cooldown, we'll see that the cooldown is now 182 seconds, and the duration is 160 seconds. So even with Trans Cooldown now, there is a 22-second window where you are not able to benefit from Cultist Sacrifice unless you happen to also buy Superior Duration, which is a big investment to get 100% uptime on this item, I will say. And also, if we go ahead and max level, we can take a look at the maximum effect of Cultist Sacrifice now. We get 31% fire rate, 207 bonus health, and 15% ability range. So, still quite nice. The fire rate boost especially is pretty big. But yeah, these are some hard-hitting nerfs to Cultist Sacrifice, and so we'll see if it's still as priority of an item as it was previously. This is actually a pretty big deal. Toxic Bullets just got a little bit better. They buffed the burn from 2.1 to 2.2% per second, and bear in mind that this does still scale with spirit powers, so it's just a flat increase to the base value, and then you still get a lot of extra value on top of that if you do scale spirit, so that's pretty nice. And also they've buffed Blood Tribute. Still not a fun item for me to use because I don't like the healing reduction and the health drain, but they have improved the healing reduction. They took it from 40% down to just 30% healing reduction, so at this point, it's almost just like a self-inflicted heal bane, which I mean, yeah, that's a lot more tolerable. So we might actually see people starting to pick this up more seriously now, because at this point, it almost seems like you can deal with the negatives, and the positives are insane. 40% fire rate, 50% debuff resist, 2.25 meters per second of movement speed, and you also get some spirit resist passively. So, I mean, yeah, as long as you're able to out-heal it with some healing items, then yeah, this could potentially be quite powerful now. Spiritual Overflow just got a very big change. This might have taken the item from to really good, just with one stat change. So, instead of giving plus 20% ability duration, it now gives 20% ability cooldown reduction. Woo! That is big! Cooldown reduction is so much more valuable than duration on so many more characters. And so, now you have another powerful way to get a lot of cooldown reduction. Superior cooldown, by the way, gives 25% ability cooldown reduction. So, you are spending more on Spiritual Overflow, but you're also getting plus 30 spirit power, plus 30% fire rate, plus 15% spirit life steal. So, on some characters now, this might actually be an insane new pickup. Now, of course, that does mean that there are fewer sources of increased duration in the game, but there were so few characters who bought this for duration. The only character I could genuinely think of using this on is Infernus. So now this just opened up a whole new suite of opportunities for this item, and we'll see what people do with this. This is exciting. All right, let's move on to the green items now. And again, I'm going to put the green items on the screen right now. You can pause if you want to read all the changes. Again, I'm only going to be covering the highlights here. So first of all, extra health actually got buffed. So the bonus health has increased from 175 to 185. Might seem small, but bear in mind that 185 bonus health in the early game is actually a really big deal. If I go ahead and reset my hero here, I only have 700 health, and then I buy extra health. Not only do I get that 185 bonus health, but I also get a percentage of extra health on top of that because of the vitality investments. Now I get 8% on top of that. So we've just gone from 700 to 941. That's big. That's a lot of extra health right there. That can literally mean the difference between life and death in a lot of situations. So that's pretty big. Rebuttal as well just keeps getting better. This item is so valuable now against melee builds. For just 800 souls, not only do you get the parry benefits, right? Minus 2 seconds parry cooldown and bonus damage against parried heroes, as well as healing yourself for that damage, but now it also gives you 18% melee resist. That's a huge amount of melee resist, especially when you compare it to the other options. So, the only other options in the game to provide melee resist are Close Quarters, which provides 20%, Point Blank, which provides 30%, Torment Pulse, which provides just 15%, so this is actually better than Torment Pulse for that, and Juggernaut, which provides 25%. So, this provides yet another source of melee resist that you can potentially stack with these other options, but also, for just a one-stop shop for countering melee builds, Rebuttal is now just so bang for your buck. Like, this is really, really nice against Abrams, Billy, all kinds of melee characters now. So really, really big buff. Veil Walker is another item on the docket that a lot of people wanted nerfed because it's been all over the place. It provides so much value. It makes you go invisible, it gives you the highest single move speed value in the game, and it also provides a ton of healing and a ton of bonus health. So they've made some changes here to nerf it. First of all, they have cut the heal almost in half, from 150 down to just 85, and they did, however, also increase the health scale per boon from 4 to 6. So if I go ahead and buy this and max level my character, we now get 283 healing for walking through a veil, which is still pretty solid, but definitely worse than it was before. However, the major changes that they've done is that they've actually nerfed the invisibility pretty substantially. So first of all, the cooldown has increased from 12 seconds to 15 seconds. That also does impact, by the way, the frequency at which you get the healing and the move speed. But also, they made it so that the reveal on damage duration has been doubled from 0.25 seconds to 0.5 seconds. The initial invis fade duration is increased from 0 seconds to 0.25 seconds, and the reveal on spotted duration is increased from 0.25 seconds to 1.25 seconds. So now, if you take damage, or you are spotted while invis, it takes much longer for you to actually re-enter invis. If I get spotted by this guy, look at how long it takes for me to go back fully invisible. So That is a very nice change. That means the invisibility component of Veilwalker isn't nearly as potent as it was before if you're not careful. Yeah, just really big nerf to the sustain and really big nerf to the invisibility component of Veilwalker. It does still give a lot of bonus health, a lot of bonus spirit power, and 4 meters per second of move speed though. So still probably a solid item, but hopefully it won't be as omnipresent as it was before, where characters who had no right to buy the item were still buying the item because it was just that good. Counter spell has been nerfed again. The parry duration has gone from 0.9 seconds down to 0.8 seconds, so you have to be even more precise with your timing of counter spell now when you want to block certain effects. So still a very powerful item, but yeah, this is a reasonable nerf. Majestic Leap got an interesting change. It is now in line with many of the other barrier items in the game, like Spirit Shielding and Weapon Shielding, in the sense that its barrier now starts low, but then scales with boons. So previously, it would give you 350 barrier at all stages in the game. But now, if you buy it right away with 0 boons, you only get 140 barrier. But then, as you get boons, it scales all the way up to a maximum of 470 barrier, which is better than before. So this should make it scale better throughout the stages of the game. There are very few characters who buy this item in the first place. This really feels like a targeted nerf to Pocket, in my opinion, because Pocket loves rushing Majestic Leap, and 350 extra hit points at the beginning-ish part of the game, right? You know, like that 8 minutes to 15 minutes range. That's actually a really big deal. Like, that is a lot of extra hit points, and so it's going to be slightly less impactful during that stage of the game in terms of the hit points, but then later on in the match, it will genuinely be more useful than it was before, so that's pretty neat. Diviner's Kevlar got some really big buffs, so the buff duration has actually been improved pretty substantially from 13 seconds to 20 seconds, and this also self-buffs itself, by the way, because that 15% extra ability duration brings us up to a total of 23 seconds of buff duration for the barrier and the spirit power. Now, the barrier probably won't last that long, but the spirit power certainly will, and 35 extra spirit power for 23 seconds is very nice, which, by the way, that's the second buff. They buffed the spirit power from 25 up to 35. So this might be a lot more savory now on ult-based builds, especially ult-based builds that want that extra ability duration, which isn't every ult, but I could see this being very useful on a character like Warden or Pocket now. Unstoppable and Colossus got some nice buffs. Unstoppable got half a second of extra duration now, which is very nice, very good at stopping crowd control now. And Colossus gives 5% more bullet and spirit resist, and it also has a 2 meter increased radius. Whoa, I just got shot. Wow, dude, that damage indicator thing on the shop is like really distracting. That's crazy. But yeah, Colossus now, just a lot better. More resistances, more radius on the slow. That is pretty nice. So yeah, cool buffs to both of these items. I already really liked both of these items, and now I'm going to buy them even more. Alright, let's take a look at the spirit items now, and most of these changes are pretty boring. Again, I'm going to put them on the screen. You can pause now and read them if you want. But yeah, most of these honestly aren't that interesting. I mean, like Rusted Barrel got buffed, I guess. Yay, the cast range has been increased to 32 meters, and the bullet resist has gone up to 8%, which is actually, I mean, I guess that's nice. I don't know. It's still Rusted Barrel, man. It's such a hard sell for me. I like these changes, I guess, but I don't know. It's a weird item. Mystic Burst and Quicksilver Reload both got nerfed, by the way. Mystic Burst now has a 14-second charge-up time instead of a 12-second charge-up time, which now I believe matches Quicksilver Reload. Actually, no, Quicksilver Reload is still 18 seconds. And Tank Buster is also 14 seconds, by the way, so both of them have the same charge-up time now. Quicksilver Reload also got another very big damage nerf. It's now down to 44 damage. Used to be 60 damage, so this is actually a pretty big deal. It's a lot farther down than it was before, so much less valuable for the damage component. That damage is still nice, but it's not hitting as hard as it used to. It's actually now basically the same as adding an extra Mystic Burst, instead of being blatantly better than Mystic Burst. So that is quite interesting. Cold Front as well also got a damage nerf from 100 down to 95, and the cooldown has been increased from 24 to 25 seconds. Mystic Slow also got a really nice change here. It got a new addition where now it slows dash distance by 10%. So that's actually a pretty big deal, and it also kind of brings it a little more in line with slowing hex. And this also apparently does extend to Lightning Scroll as well. However, there's so much written here on the description of Lightning Scroll, it looks like it doesn't actually say that it slows their dash distance, but it should still be working on Lightning Scroll. Now, a very silly thing about Disarming Hex is that when they buffed the range of Rusted Barrel, like last patch I think it was, they didn't buff the range of Disarming Hex. So Disarming Hex had a worse range than Rusted Barrel, which is just stupid. So they did actually bring Disarming Hex up to parity with Rusted Barrel, and this is actually a pretty big deal. The range has gone from 23 meters to 32 meters. That is actually quite big. So just thought I'd mention that, because yeah, that will actually make it a lot easier to use. And finally, the biggest change out of all the spirit items here. Spirit Burn now goes on half cooldown when it's procced on non-heroes. This is the final nail in the coffin for Mina and her stupid ultimate shredding objectives, because you could proc Spirit Burn infinitely, just pop, 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 pop. 500, 500, 500, just so much damage, so many explosions. Now, yeah, it's not going to do that anymore, so yeah, gone are the days of being able to proc Spirit Burn on a target consistently. Now you do actually only get to proc it once on a camp here. Let's go ahead and just upgrade the Lightning Ball, I guess, and try and make it proc here. And once it explodes, there we go, you see, it now goes on cooldown, and I cannot proc it against this minion, or against players, I don't think, until it comes back. So yeah, it actually didn't proc there. Now the cooldown's back, now it procs. So this will actually hurt Spirit Burn's effectiveness really, really severely if you are someone who also happens to spend a lot of time hitting camps, because if you happen to hit a camp at the wrong time, you proc Spirit Burn on the camp, and then it's on cooldown for when you need to proc it against an enemy. That is really going to suck. So this is a very, very big nerf to Spirit Burn. It is, of course, a very, very powerful spirit item, though, so I do think this is reasonable, and if it happens to be too much of a nerf, then they could always adjust the cooldown versus either NPCs or just in general to make it more consistent. But yeah, thank goodness for this change, because seeing Spirit Burn just proc again and again and again and again and again and just delete a walker or a mid-boss or something like that, it's not really fair. It shouldn't have been doing that, so this is a very good change. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video, so let me know what you think about these changes in the comments section down below, and make sure to like this video and subscribe if you enjoyed and you want to see more content from me. I would really appreciate it. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.